Alright, another DraftPhysics video presentation. Yeah, comments. I think, and that probably will be enough. Nothing new, really. The physicist guy is the one that wasn't and now is again. So, but another few days still to research. So we'll see what happens. Frankly, part of me just wants the raw response. You ask the question, well, what about gravity being the wrong shaped lens? It's not a magnifying lens. How could it possibly magnify objects when it's the wrong shape to magnify? It doesn't collect a whole bunch of light. Really can't do that and then send it to a location. It's just not the right shaped lens for that. What about that? Anyway, and just see, what kind of action, reaction. Anyway, so I'm saying, thanks for taking the time. So this is Dino. So this is kind of a complimentary comment. Don't really like to read those, but it was a nicely written pile of stuff. I haven't actually seen a video you referenced. Nearly all of my pop physics knowledge comes from reading Hawkins' Brief History of Time. So I'm surprised, just because it's not a very good overview of physics, in my opinion. It's not well written, and I fell asleep halfway through it. Anyway, back in the early 90s, I probably spent more time with that book face down on my knee trying to comprehend and muttering. Yeah, all of it gets way abstract really quickly, and, the abstractions are sort of impossible to draw in your head, and so it's really not much fun. Anyway, what the fucking fuck. And then I did actually reading it. Anyway, spent more time not reading it. Yes, I understand that. Since my experience with these ideas is so limited, I'm not able to accept or dismiss anything I learn until I've heard from as many sources as possible. Well, sure, that's important, but some things are plain and some things aren't. You can do a test for gravity and you don't really need to see too many people do the test, and, it all comes out the same. So some things you can take for granted, just because, it's tested so clearly and cleanly that there's no subject to interpretation stuff going on. But then analyzing cloud chamber interactions, that's a whole different thing because it's not so clear. Something else you give an example of, I suppose, but interferometers, I like to pick on. Where exactly does the light go? Lots of stories, but no real good drawings. Anyway, anything until. But there aren't that many unique sources for this stuff. Well, there isn't any original thinking going on or any conversation. I was really surprised, frankly, when watching the Professor Lewin videos. I kind of thought that he, came up with these experiments as demonstrations and blah, blah, blah. And then you find out the same things were recorded, back in the 50s. Same exact demonstrations, and always done precisely the same way to produce the desired, for the sake of the argument, kind of. They're clearly quote mined experiments. They're clearly engineered because they produce the result they want, and that there is a somewhat obvious inconsistency in how they perform these experiments. For example, they have a variable slit, right, that they can vary how thick it is. Now, what's so complicated about putting an impediment in the middle of that variable slit and then varying the slit, to have a variable double slit? Well, I think it's because the results would not be to their favor, in terms of it would be making it kind of obvious that it's about how far apart the two external surfaces are. But anyway, it would make it more obvious that the pattern is being controlled by the two factors, and that it's not a mystery. The outside slits are making the little bars, and the inside surfaces are making the envelope pattern. So those experiments aren't shown, because they're not, they don't support the conventional theory. They don't provide an illustration that makes it, that provides supportive evidence. It's kind of, it produces doubt more than it would produce confidence. All right. Let's see, unique sources. Most people just seem to be repeating what everyone else is already saying. Yes, it's a lot of that, and it's, it's a big thing in the sense that there's no interest in physics itself in examining these original experiments for which conclusions were drawn. And there's no evidence to try to find out if any of that has any validity. So, like the Eddington experiment never being reperformed with decent technology. And you just say, well, how is that even possible? How could they not take advantage of new technology to do this fundamental experiment that proves Einstein right and all that crap? And they don't. And you'd say, how can there be that little reasoning? How can they not see that as an opportunity for the application of technology? Especially the space satellite thing. Like I said, you can do the experiment any day you want to, in one day, with a satellite. Yes, you'd be good if you take the reference photos 6 months different, but I'm just saying it takes very little time. You still have to wait the 6 months, but other than that, it's a couple hours work and that's it. Anyway, unique sources. Okay, saying anything but with shinier animations and graphics. Well, yeah, and they're all just kind of a distortion and a perversion, and even the things that are supposed to be they're shown as photographs, like the lensed images. They're in the X-ray band, or they're in some other, they're not really images. They're created. They're synthetic. And, I'm not saying you can't do some of that. I'm just saying that the line where you've taken where you've taken something and gotten more information out of it, and the line where you're just creating noise or artifacts, that line isn't very hardly drawn. So I would say, like LIGO, you take a system that has a tremendous amount of noise in it, and you can almost find anything you want in it, and that's the danger. And these images are so aggressively processed to try to pull data out of them that sometimes I think they're just pulling noise out of them. Anyway, noise that they want to find, noise that looks like signal. All right, when they take a blender image, they put crap in a blender and swirl it around and say that's a black hole, that kind of stuff is just such a cheat in terms of giving people an impression that is, I don't think, fair and accurate. Anyway, so I'm grateful to hear anyone attempt to explain the universe in a way that doesn't resort to the same old magical, unknowable forces. Except, of course, Ken Wheeler. I couldn't even make it through 2 minutes of that mental patient's painfully flagrant gibberish. Well, there is gibberish. Flagrant to, people are allowed to think these things exist, hyperboloids and toroids, and it's no worse than conventional physics in terms of, they have no reason to think there's anything moving in a magnet, right? So, I can go back to that simple argument that, they just keep drawing this classic picture of the magnet, where they take these field lines that are not the lines of force. They know if these were charges, it would be doing this. Okay, they know a charge does this. So if I made this plus and minus and I put them together like this, they know that they would be doing this, and that the field lines would just be, you know, where two vectors, the lines coming off the south end mix with the lines coming off the north end, and they create a circumstance, a balance, you know, an equality, and that these would be all the places where you'd have this equal balance, and that's all the line is a representation of. And yet they put an arrow on it, and then they give everybody this impression that magnets are doing this thing, that they're moving something, and they can't stick anything in here and see this movement. It's just not visible movement. And these arrows go just the opposite way. If they fix plus and minus, then the arrows go the opposite way. So, I mean, it's, you know, it's completely arbitrary, and, you know, that's what they sell. It's, to me, it's no better than her hyperboloid nonsense. Obviously, it looks a little hyperboloidy. So they've given people every reason to believe in this swirly crap when they don't have any physical evidence that anything is swirling in these directions. And there's every evidence that this is just blue light, you could say, coming out of here, and there's red light coming out of here. And what you do is you measure how much purple is there. That's all you're really measuring. You know, you're taking something that's reactive to red, and you're saying, what does that do? Well, yeah, the thing reactive to red goes away from this side, and it goes around and comes down here. You know, it's just a... Anyway. But appreciate the... Yeah, I wish more people just drew physics and explained how things move in the universe. That would be nice. But apparently that's not physics. Anyway, in summary, I have no idea if your theory is the one true explanation of how the universe works. Yeah, well, I'm making two arguments. The first argument is theirs clearly isn't the one true, in the sense that they haven't proven it. They haven't proven it past counter theories that are just as good as their theory, at least just as good. I mean, I'd clearly argue that my theory is better because it's simpler and it covers more. So it's more universal and it's made of a simpler mechanism. So it wins, you know, in terms of a competition. But that's all you have is, you know, the best. If you don't have, you know, we know. But I'm saying there is also the fact that if it does fit enough, that it becomes less and less probable that it's wrong, because the right theory won't be able to fit enough things. So the more it fits, the more likely it is to be true, just because some random thing, you know, you can't just make some fake thing that could pass all the tests. The counterfeit would be, you know, there's not going to, the randomness isn't going to produce a perfect counterfeit that can fit all the standards of the truth. So the odds of something being wrong get lower and lower the more it fits, more and more experiments. Okay, let's see, theory is, okay, but the fact that you're trying to do it without any woo is good enough for me. I don't know if I'm trying to do it without any woo, but yeah, clearly, yes, I have an aversion to woo, so I would like to find a non-woo answer. If it's there first, that's my preference. So, yeah. I mean, look, if somebody can produce you know, if some guy walks on water, you know, okay, I'll become a believer. But yeah, I don't see anything in the evidence that requires woo. There's nothing miraculous in these, like the double slit. It's not miraculous. It's not unexplainable. It's not blah, 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 blah. There's nothing about it that is beyond our capacity to understand as reasonable mechanisms. Now, again, if they could prove that there's a photon going to a location and that by making more photons they made that photon disappear, Well, if they could prove that actually happens, well then, yeah, then they got something. They got something that I would put in the category of, well, gee, that's completely inconsistent with everything we know about photons. So how the hell is it doing that? All right. So, thanks. All right, so Dave, who, 80%er, 75%er, maybe, not too stupid too often. But anyway, don't be daft just means don't be silly, sure, I'll do it. Well, I don't think that's what it always means. I mean, daft, it's a pretty simple word. It just means, oh, come on, don't be ridiculous, don't be silly, don't be stupid. So it's a pretty common phrase for that circumstance. I don't know if it says all this extra stuff. It's don't be silly. It doesn't, but the sure I'll do it thing. No, I don't think so. I mean, let's go to the context of the statement. Sorry for the people who don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. So I'm bargaining, a price, and I basically tell them, look, I want to fairly compensate you for your time, but I don't want to be much poorer to do it. Because you offer $700 an hour. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. And I pointed out I'd also be interested in how much he would charge to post the conversation on his channel. And I'm willing to pay 3 digits for that. So, it seems to me that requires some sort of rational response. And he says, don't be daft. I don't charge money for my time. With a crying, he's laughing so hard. He's crying. He's actually literally crying. He's laughing so hard. I mean, who doesn't charge for their time, I mean, if I ask somebody to tie my shoes and, they're on their way to work and time is money, yeah, I'm going to have to pay a doctor more than I have to pay the ditch digger, I would think. There's no denying I'm asking you to do something you don't want to do on your own. So clearly I'm inconveniencing you in some way or something. So I don't have the expectation that I'm going to get what I want for free. I would like that. I'd be impressed if that's how you worked. But there's no evidence that's what this negotiation has in it. All there is evidence is I ask for a reasonable number, you give me $600, and I ask for a better definition than that, because that seems way too high, and then you say $700. So what? The whole conversation is some sort of joke, right? I mean, yeah, I don't like offering. So he said, make me an offer. Well, what am I going to, what, $15? I mean, well, I'm trying to minimize my costs. I'm saying, how much do you really, how much do you make doing these videos an hour? If you had to add up all the work you do and this is the preparation, blah, blah, blah. What are you really raking in? And maybe I can double that. But can you give me some kind of reasonable number? Well, anyway, so who knows what he's saying there? Is he mocking? I mean, I don't charge money for my time. Is that what everybody else would say? I mean, is that how you don't charge money for your time either? I mean, I don't understand. His time is money in the sense that he produces videos online. So I'm, in a sense, asking to divert that process. So I'm taking him away from his normal job. Something like that. I don't know. I mean, it just doesn't... sorry. Yeah, I don't think it's as simple as you're saying. And if it is, then I just think there's got to be a better way for human beings to communicate, because this isn't working. Anyway. All right. Almost every time don't be daft just means he'll do it for free in this instance. Well, yeah, I would agree. It might mean that if there wasn't this crying, he's laughing so hard. I mean, you know what I mean? You don't cry laughing when you're trying to explain how, oh yeah, I don't know, my time is free. Yeah, go ahead, ask me for anything. You need a new house? Yeah, I'll come over and build it for you. Yeah, my time doesn't cost anything, sure. I'm just, sorry. I'm a person who does a lot of shit for free. So, when somebody asks me to tie their shoes, I'll do it for free. But that's to tie their shoes. I'm not going to do anything for free. Yeah, whatever. All right, regarding Baldy, if I was in your place, I'd follow up by asking him, Well, I did follow up. So, yeah, I finally came to some sort of, I said, well, I got to say something, I guess. So I said, like wave-particle duality, I really don't understand this reply. Are you in a superposition of not interested in doing it for free and also not willing to do it for money? Because that's what he seems to be saying. Don't be ridiculous. I don't take money. But I'm not doing it for free. I mean, I've asked him to do it for free, and I've already communicated in the past with him. I requested the conversation. I didn't get anywhere. So, I mean, if he's giving it away, he's not giving it away to me. I mean, I want him to, debunk me or do whatever his little flat earth thing. Go ahead, take me on. I think I'm a little more equipped to defend my alternative theory than the flat earthers. And I'm certainly, I think, more equipped to challenge your conventional flat earth theory, frankly. Your bent space universe is about as ridiculous as a flat earth theory, frankly. It's as poorly proven. All right. I'd follow up by asking him if he wanted to do an interrogation of my proposals and criticisms. Well, obviously that requires him doing some research, so that's asking for a lot of time, right? I mean, gravity, charge, magnetism. Gravity, charge, magnetism. Which one am I forgetting this time? Oh, light. Light doesn't really count, it's just the speed of light. Light has a bias built into it. Well, light does deserve a category of its own just because it's this whole thing at a frequency, which has created the whole wave nonsense. Anyway, interrogation on my proposals and criticisms. Right, well, it's like I said, that would be asking for more than 1 hour of somebody's time, so that's a lot of, that's asking to tie a lot of shoes. Or directly ask for an expose video about you on his channel. Same difference, right? I mean, I imagine he has to do some research on the flat earthers' arguments, and then he has to, put together an argument debunking the silly, idiotic conclusion they draw based on the whatever Sasquatch walking a very flat plane. Anyway, he can go ahead and try to make it look ridiculous as long as he treats the subject with some scrutiny, sincerity. Well, I don't even care. Either way, I win, right? So, yeah, if he does anything on his channel that talks about me, it's definitely going to get me some traffic, and it's going to get me traffic of people who know something about physics. I mean, the people who watch these videos are usually people who know something about physics. Unlike my fucking audience. Anyway, that won't make the arising questions disappear. Well, it also will be where, maybe he'll get trapped in an interaction that way, right? I mean, I guess these flat earthers aren't very good at counter-arguing, once they've been debunked. But I would imagine if you make a good counter-argument, he's going to have to come back for... Okay, well, maybe I didn't mean to say exactly, you'd be able to debunk the debunker, How could, it could be similar to his other content, since people often throw slurs at you like flat earther, and you're just a fringe, if not more. Yeah, I'm obviously more, because I'm not lying, and also, people love liars. I'm not telling some fairy story. I mean, the flat earthers only have momentum because it's really the reality deniers that gravitate to flat earth. I mean, these are people who want God to exist, and they want the world to be, made out of gingerbread. If he refuses or ignores the next replies, bring up the topic of money back into the mix. Yeah, I mean, I don't like being harassing, but it's really to that point. I don't think it's rude to ask the question, so yeah, maybe I'll just keep, I was doing it in private and getting ignored, so maybe if I just make public comments, then I have to force him to delete me or block me, and then I can just say, see, he complains about being blocked, and yet he blocks people for merely asking him how much he's going to charge to tie their shoes. I think 200 would look reasonable, and you were already promised 3 digits. Yeah, well, how much I'm willing to pay, right? I might be willing to pay 500, right? I just don't want to say how much am I willing to pay under the worst circumstances, right? I mean, I'm going to try to get away with the cheap as I can, right? That's the sensible thing to do. So, I mean, I'm not going to make him an offer if I have to make an offer based on some guess about what his time is worth. By the way, I like the molested photon molestation joke. Yeah, I don't remember it, but yeah, okay. Let's see. Do you often imagine what it is like to be in other people's place? Perv. Well, I would imagine every person who has any affinity with my channels is probably going to be that kind of person, frankly, because that's the nature of realizing life is shit. Is not because you're not in shit. It's just that you know you don't want to be in shit because you've seen people in shit. You don't want to be one of them people in the shit. Saw a video from like Norway or something where there was a mudslide and a little punk of the country just sank into the ocean. And it had like 8 houses on it. And I just was imagining what it'd be like where you're sitting there, your home, and you're watching it on video, and you're just, oh man, I have video of my house sliding into the ocean. Ugh. Yeah, you don't want to be that person. Yeah, no. Very superficially, but yes, all the time, for example. So superficially, but all the time. I don't know. For example, I can tell that Gary won't be very appreciative of our off-topic banter here. I wouldn't care. The sub-comments and the sub-comments is probably okay. And frankly, it's banter, about a comment that's way off subject anyway. But yes, it's my fault for being off subject in the sense that I'm trying to talk about physics. Trying to negotiate a conversation about physics. And so, yeah, it's part of the subject because apparently you do have to do all this negotiating to find anyone willing to defend conventional physics who isn't an insane troll. So, yeah, I'd like to find somebody besides insane troll. All right. Yeah, we don't need to go back there. Okay, we'll go back to the comments. Alright, so this person I'm not too thrilled with. It's like some Saddam Hussein picture. I don't know. I'm no Ken Wheeler fan. The guy is a complete loon. Yes, I don't know if loon is the right word, but I mean his dishonesty he's demonstrated. So not only in his, taking copyrights off photos, but misdescribing experiments. I mean, he's overtly said that he didn't do anything to the solar cell, the cell that gets light from the sun. But he didn't explicitly say, oh yeah, well there was holes for the sun to go through. So he's willing to really play overtly malicious kind of games with the truth. Being very selective about how he says something, to pretend, I did not have sexual relations. Yeah, I had a form of sex, but I didn't have sexual relations, with that toyroid. He bullshits. I'm not sure if, but I'm not sure if you debunked his argument. I don't know what part of his argument was I debunking. I even said, look, you people who want to believe in an ether, you can go ahead. I'm just saying mechanically, I see it as being 2 things: redundant or superfluous. That would be the word I would use. Superfluous. It just doesn't mean much. Now, I'm all for it if you're quantizing something. But that Ken Wheeler isn't doing that. Okay, so my disagreement with Ken Wheeler isn't just about, well, how does a photon, whatever he thinks that is, get from point A to point B? Now, he argues, that it has to perturbate. That is, it just goes like this. The surface of something does something, moves, and that movement is transferred through a medium of dominoes or whatever to get to point B. So it pushes on something else. So it pushes on something, it pushes on something, it pushes on something, it pushes, So that's ether, okay? You need this pushing medium to get it through somewhere. Now, I've argued that first that doesn't make any sense because we know this medium can't be very sophisticated, right? So how does the medium know when to allow something to just be a straight line, just go straight from point A to point B, and when it's supposed to go to every location, in 2 dimensions? That is, the wave would be going this way and that way in this direction. So it's not going that direction, so half of the dimensions are out of luck. So it's going to fill 1.5, of the available dimensions with stuff, and then somehow, so how does it know when it's supposed to go everywhere, and when it's supposed to go just one place as a wave? I mean, how does this wave know it's supposed to be just a little wave going this way, or it's supposed to be a wave going every way? I mean, it just doesn't mechanically make any sense, but somehow the medium has to know the 2 different circumstances. And how could the medium know? It's, come on. And then the other argument I made is, so I'm just saying that's one problem that kind of just breaks this whole idea of A to B, and what you're going to make this medium out of. So the problem is what do you make the medium out of? I mean, we know that all the mediums, like water and everything that waves can travel through, we know there's rules about how they travel, and they don't do the things that we see in the subatomic world in terms of how those things move. So there's a huge inconsistency. And then the problem is it doesn't matter what I make it out of. If I make it out of squares, then I got this weird diagonal thing where the diagonal distance is a lot longer in terms of the number of squares I'm perturbating than the horizontal distance, right? So that doesn't really work because we know these distances can't be different. I mean, there's so many experiments sort of demonstrate that. And if I make it out of something rounder, I still haven't fixed the problem because the round stuff can't be in a perfect geometry either. The round stuff would have to be, round stuff in different locations, and you still have a diagonal problem. You can't make a straight line in your medium in every direction. You need to be able to make a straight line in every single direction. Any possible direction can make a straight line. That's what you have to have a medium that can do. And there's no real geometry for that. There's nothing that will geometrically give you that option except just to have empty space, okay? And just shoot it like a bullet, shoot it like a bullet in empty space. I mean, just shoot it from point A to point B. Let it fly there, okay, all by itself. It does one thing. It flies around at the speed of light. And we kind of know this stuff is perpetual. The energy is perpetual, that it just transfers into things. It goes from one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing, and it's always technically doing this speed of light thing. You can just, all you do is trap it in matter. And it's always moving the speed of light, and so it doesn't need any engines and doesn't need any of this stuff. It's just made, it just does this. This is what it does. And to me, this is so simple, and it is a satisfactory mechanism. I don't need all of this medium crap to explain the universe. The mediums are made out of matter. They aren't what makes matter. Anyway. So let's read his argument, which is not a very good one. Ken was talking about how the perturbation cause or whatever has to travel in a straight line in the ether. Well, I don't think he was talking about how it travels in a straight line, but that's the whole point. He evades it. And he thinks everything is rectilinear. Everything's curved lines. Straight lines are an illusion. I mean, he has it exactly backwards. Which, according to your diagram, that doesn't make sense since you can't arrange these circles such that they can create a straight line to perturbate. Yes, I thought I'd illustrate it. So what are you arguing about? Given your diagram, I would agree with you, but your diagram has square circles. What are you talking about? And even if it did, a square circle, how could I have a square circle, frankly? These are circles here, you know. I'm just saying, you show me. You show me how you arrange your circles so you can go in a straight line in any direction with a perturbation. Show me how you get straight lines, no matter what shape you make your jello out of. Okay, your fluid, your medium. Show me what you make it out of that you can perturbate in any direction in a straight line. I'm just saying there's no geometry that really allows that. Would you perturbate? Given your diagram, I would agree with you, but your diagram, okay. If such an ether existed, wouldn't it have multiple circles, to use your drawing, all close together to where there is no space between any given circles effectively? Well, I mean, if you can draw that, fine. I don't think there's ever no space, but let's make all the circles some other shape. Doesn't matter whether you make all the surfaces stick to each other or not stick to each other. What I'm saying is there's no elemental geometry will allow you to have straight lines for the perturbation. You can't shape the dominoes. So any way you shape the dominoes in the field, there will not be what you need, which is essentially an infinite number of straight line possibilities. That won't be what you'll have. You'll have very limited straight line possibilities. All right. Choice is effectively creating a straight line on the circles to perturbate, question mark. Well, my answer to that is no. So even if you get rid of all, even if you create hexagons, it doesn't, I don't know, you want to connect all the lines, you can't do it with circles. All right. This would be possible. This would be a possible retort a Ken Wheeler fan would say to you. Well, it's just about as lame as what they produce, so I'd say it's pretty lame. You're telling me you can do it geometrically, and I'm saying I haven't seen any geometry that makes it possible, so go ahead and show me what geometric shape allows you to go in a straight line in any direction. Because I'm saying you're not going to be able to find one. All right, anyway. Parasitic conspiracy theories is my pet peeve. Yeah, interesting. I don't like the word conspiracy because, yes, it has been abused by so many whack jobs. And it almost doesn't matter. I mean, frankly, whether there's 2 people involved or 10 people involved. Yes, so you could say there's some conspiracies in the sense that things happen for which everybody's ignorant except a few people know. Like you could argue the stock market crash in 29. There was some people in the know and they knew what was going on and they exploited the fuck out of everybody else. So there's people who have insider knowledge, you know, and take advantage. But conspiracies on what level, you know? Hiding truth, you know. Stealing. Yeah, there's people stealing. You know, there's lots of stuff going on that you could call a conspiracy because there's more than one thief in on it. But does it matter whether one thief steals the $1 million or whether it's 6 guys who steal the $1 million? I don't know. There are real and rational conspiracy theories. I don't know if there really are. There's real and rational ways of describing a circumstance with, you know, accurate statements. Now, I would argue, like the Federal Reserve, for example, has a bunch of extra money in it that nobody can account for why it's in there. Okay. Nobody accounts for it in a rational way. They think it's like a bunch of extra money the banks aren't loaning, when actually it was a bunch of fake money, okay, the government put in there as digits to buy their own bonds, okay. And they made a deal with the bankers that the bankers can't take the money out of the accounts. Even though the account has the bank's name on it, the money isn't really the bank's money. There's a real deal the Federal Reserve made with the banksters. And yeah, not too many people know about it, But would you call it a conspiracy, or would you just call it the fact that you don't really require your government to have any integrity or honesty? You vote for crooks, and the crooks do crooked things. I mean, it's not really a conspiracy against the American people to keep them stupid and ignorant, because the American people basically have said, please keep me stupid and ignorant. You don't want anything called transparency or accountability. When they try to pass laws forcing you to be accountable, you don't want to hear about it. You know, so what the fuck? You don't want accountable Social Security number. You don't want your phone to track where you are. You don't want this. You have to hide with a VPN on the internet because you don't want to be accountable for anything. I mean, you hate accountability. So of course you have a world where people take advantage of you because you're too stupid to know that the only way you can stop them is to have some sort of way to tell the difference between the lying scum and the not lying scum. And you don't want there to be any fucking way to tell the difference. Alright, anyway. I'm sorry, way off subject, but anyway. But the way the masses tend to generalize everything, they will just lump these bullshit conspiracy theories into the legitimate ones. Yay. So I don't know what the fuck this has to do with the video. The video was basically just pointing out how conventional physics is really stupid and silly, and it's not really a conspiracy. I mean, they don't know they're stupid and silly. I don't know how they don't know it. I mean, it does stun me, because they are educated. You know, they have gone through the process of well, you know, maybe that's the problem. They really didn't go through much of a process, right? Because if you really watch the physics lectures, it's 90% math. It really just doesn't deal with the concepts. It doesn't beat the concepts to death at all. It just beats these stupid formulas to death, you know, and how to do derivatives and all that kind of stuff. And so it's all about complex mathematical theory more than it is anything about conceptually understanding mechanically what's happening. Alright, but anyway, not very useful. Speaking of not very useful, so physics novice, you know, who, you know, generally can follow along what goes on here. I mean, as much as I hate unannotated links, I really hate just completely unannotated comments. I mean, you know, this comment is, I mean, fuck you. I mean, in a sense. I mean, just, what the hell? Polycarp Crush for reference. So you're going to actually force me to go look up this asshole and then try to find what he's did, right? So I did do that, okay, because yeah, I hadn't heard of him. So this is the guy who did the first experiments on magnetic moments, probably Stern Gerlach. The guy did a lot of experiments with atoms, you know, shooting atoms around, and said, you know, the predicted value wasn't what the actual value was coming out, you know, something like that. And so he got a Nobel Prize for that. But that's about it. I mean, there's nothing else as a reference. And it's not like you can find the experiments. You can't find any real data. You can find his Nobel Prize ceremony. You can find he has a lecture series named after him. And he's apparently was a silly fucking loop-de-doo happy person. You know, bright side of physics kind of, you know, isn't it all beautiful and wonderful and magical? He was a real fairy princess type. And, you know, but that's, you know, what is the expectation? You think this is really helpful? I don't think it's helpful at all. I mean, you know, I need the experiments. I don't need the reference to the guy who got a frickin' prize for saying something. But anyway, all right. So that's where we're stuck. I mean, magnetic moments is just, like I said, it's all bullshit. They don't study electrons to determine any of this stuff. They study atoms, so they're just detecting the magnetic moment of atoms, and they're calling it something an electron has, which I think is just, that's cheating. But anyway, kind of egregious cheating. But whatever. Alright, so that's probably enough. Why beat it to death, as they say. I'm tired. Yeah. No. Alright, so I'll cut you a break. And so till the next time and such, I'll endeavor to persevere. Or win. Yeah, that's what I'll do.